Hey, AJ, what time do you wake up?
It really will depend, but latest I think would probably be 6:37.
Jay?
I generally wake up around 4:30, 4:45. Pee, go back to sleep, wake up the second time around 7.
I just been watching BadAsh, and you guys have your new routine, and you're like, we're getting up early, 6 a.m. And I'm like, 6 a.m., dude. I've been up for like 2 hours. I've got all my most important thing done by 6 a.m. and
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate. Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to episode 95 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband, and Jay, looking good, man. Look, you get a haircut or something? What's going on?
I just got out of the shower a few minutes ago, and literally I'm sitting here thinking I need a haircut. It's looking like crap. It's growing out in different lengths and different spots. So I literally grabbed the clippers and just started shaving around my head, and I'm really surprised I don't have a bald. I mean, I do have a bald. I have plenty of bald spots, but I'm surprised I didn't just create a bald spot.
You got something about Mary hair gel in there or something. It looks great, man. You drinking tonight?
Dun dun dun.
No.
Oh my gosh, what?
Oh wow.
No, actually, I'm not drinking tonight. I just pulled out a bottle of the Plaza Azul tequila.
Is it
I know
full?
it's not. It is not. It's an empty bottle. I just wanted to get you guys really excited, especially you, Kyle. But no, I am not drinking tonight. I decided to just go with coffee tonight.
So he shows up late. He cuts his own hair and doesn't even drink.
Yeah. What's going on here? We talked about this, AJ. Jay's commitment to this podcast has been waning a little bit, right? Like,
Yeah, I have noticed it's been a while since you've been drunk.
Let's be clear. I'm a regular guy. I show up late. I cut my own hair. I drink coffee instead of alcohol. I'm just a normal guy.
you know what I did notice too?
You.
I know you guys probably don't notice because I'm the only one who goes back and watches our own episodes, but I did notice, like, over the last 6 months, Jay, you've done a lot of times of you show a bottle of wine unopened and then you kind of just set it down. And I'm like, did he ever open that thing? He just set it down and I didn't see any act of getting a corkscrew or anything out. And it's a little shady.
I always open the bottle of wine before I sit down. So if I'm showing a bottle of wine, it's almost always open before I.
I have had a lot of people that have commented that like you have a drunk real estate podcast and nobody's drunk.
Well, speak for yourselves. Mauricio, what do you how you doing?
I'm doing good. Other than I am drinking because I have a unwavering dedication and commitment to this podcast. The problem though is, Kyle, is that I ran out from those of you who saw last week. I ran out of my Macallans, and so I had to turn to this Woodford Reserve stuff, which I know you're a big fan of. And man, the quality just went down the tubes. I mean, the quality difference between my Macallans and the Woodford Reserve is out of whack.
Well, you do realize they're two different types of alcohol, right? So they taste different.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying they taste different. Like one tastes good and one tastes not good. But anyway, I'm doing good. Looking forward to the show.
Of types of alcohol. It's you don't have to just shit on one type if you don't like it. It's okay. And I am going to drink. I'll come back to you, AJ. But just because he said it, I just got this much left in my bottle of Woodford, so I'm going to finish it. And as a reserve, I just brought a thing of clear. You know, I always just have it in my cooler right next to me here. It's a fridge next to me.
So what's the saying? Clear after liquor, never sicker.
Actually, I used to live and die by that, Jay. So it was
or is it liquor before clear, never fear.
Yeah, it says liquor before beer. You're in the clear. Anyway, AJ, how's it going, man?
You know what? Going really good. I got my Diet Coke here and my licorice. I'm ready to go.
Licorice, what color? Red or black?
Oh, come on,
I
dude.
hope it's black.
It's
Red?
Black?
I got like members of my family just love black licorice, and I don't get it. It's one of those things. It's one of the most disgusting tastes I've ever had.
I don't have any mental illness, so red's fine with me.
AJ, what are you going to do now that they're banning red number 40 though, or whatever number whatever?
You know, I've had it in other countries. Still good.
It'll be beige licorice. It'll still be delicious.
And I like a lot of those. Like
all food is going to be gray moving forward.
It's going to be hilarious.
Gray.
Hey, pass me the gray licorice.
Not that flavor. I want the other gray, the dark gray.
All right, should we get into this? Actually, I have a couple of notes on the agenda that aren't on the list. Not that you guys actually read the list, but you didn't want to talk about it as full topics. But I do want to bring up the fact Canada has a new prime minister. They just had an election on Monday.
Nobody cares. Nobody gives.
And well, I mean, they've been in the news all the time. They might be shutting off power to 3 states of the U.S. Then those states will care. But anyway, I just thought it was pretty crazy. If you look back, even 6 months ago, Canada kind of had the same thing going on as the U.S., where they were fed up with the Liberals, and they had a pretty like their own kind of little MAGA movement. And they had this Pierre Poilievre was a huge Trump supporter, parroted a lot of the things Trump was saying, and he was way ahead in the polls to the point where that's why Trudeau kind of had to step down. He was so far behind in the polls. And then all of a sudden, tariffs, the whole, 50-second state, the whole thing like that.
51st state.
Well, like I thought Greenland was going to be the 51st, but and then all that happened to the point where like Trump became public and like everyone in Canada just hated Trump. And so I felt almost bad. I didn't like the guy, Pierre Poilievre. I almost felt bad for him because he had to literally like try and walk back all of the things he had like previously said good about Trump. And all they did they just had their election is just play all the clips of him praising Trump. And so he got crushed in the election. So I don't know if that was a great move by Trump. He could have had like just a little supporter in office in Canada, and he could have been a de facto 51st state. But now he's got somebody who's his whole platform was fighting him. So I just thought that was interesting. We don't have to necessarily discuss it as a full topic, but
I don't even think Trump knew that there was an election or that there was a vote or anything else. I think he probably won't know.
But here's the weird thing. Today, he was bragging about the fact that he was responsible for this guy losing. Like he was the biggest Trump supporter in Canada, and Trump was bragging about like being the guy that like cost him the election. I don't know if that was just like.
But that's the thing. I would have thought like, wouldn't you want him in office? Like, I don't know, man.
I think had he won, Trump would have bragged about I was the one that got him elected. So Trump just needed to brag about whatever happened he was responsible for.
And since we're on the topic, the other thing I just wanted to point out. Big Bad Eagles went to the White House. They did their White House visit. They got their little 15 minutes of fame.
Did they win the Super Bowl?
I know. I thought I was going to say something along the line. Did football season start?
Are we talking about somebody else that nobody knows what they are? Canada, and then who are these other people?
The Bald Eagles. The Bald Eagles, like that.
The Bald Eagles.
Yeah, the American Bald Eagles. They're flying around the White House.
Guys,
the national bird now.
You can't bring me down because we're the champions. So there's nothing you can say. Like, I don't even have to defend being a fan. We're the best in the world. So nothing you can say to bring me down.
Is this the best? Is this the best in the world where nobody else plays the sport in the world?
Well, it's still the best in the world. All right, let's fine. You guys want to rush to a TED Talk from Jay? Then here we go.
Let's skip straight to the top 10. Can we do that?
Yeah, we could if you want. Well, this week's kind of weird. We have another case of like wrong place, wrong time this week. Where we're recording this on Tuesday, but upcoming this week we have like a ton of economic releases. Where we have the unemployment report, jobless claims report, ADP employment, PCE inflation report, and worst of all, we have the Q1 GDP tomorrow. So as I said, we're recording this Tuesday. The GDP is released tomorrow, and then our podcast drops on Thursday. So we literally can't talk about it because by the time this releases, it'll be in the past, and we're talking in the future. So
yeah, but I've been trying to get you guys to move it to Wednesdays, but you guys don't want to do it, and this would be a perfect example of why
we all agreed.
We're a professional operation, Mauricio. We can't do this whole like record and then have it out in 12 hours anymore. We have actual people. We have producer Alex, who I know is listening intently right now from her car. We have to respect her time and the fact that we can't just turn this around overnight anymore. So anyway, that's the decision we decided to make. But considering those reports will give us plenty to talk about next week, we figured we would fill in the gaps of some of the other stuff that's going on in the economic news happening. And we know Jay can fill time. So Jay, why don't you give us the rundown of some of the other stuff that's going on that we aren't being released this week?
So, yeah, I can talk about some of the other stuff, but I also want
I want to talk about the stuff that's already being released as people hear, because I want to give my predictions of what came out, because I know I know what's going to happen.
So this is good. This is a good place to start. So let me start with we've been getting, obviously we get data all the time. And the data we've been getting is actually really good. The last GDP report, which obviously was last quarter ending December, so that's a long time ago, but that was good. We got good inflation numbers last month. Unemployment numbers we get every week. Those all look good for the last several months. Basically, all the data we're seeing is looking good. Problem is, and I hate saying the problem is because I'm guessing, but I think this is an educated guess, that all this data is trailing data. And I want to kind of use an analogy or a metaphor that I used back during COVID. I wrote a Facebook post back in March of 2020, right at the beginning of COVID, when the data was still looking good, but everybody kind of knew that things were collapsing because of COVID. We're kind of at the beginning of something similar here with tariffs, I believe. And so I think this is an apt metaphor. If you think about like the Coyote and Roadrunner animation, that cartoon that we used to watch as kids, or at least I did because I'm old. Remember when the coyote would like run off the cliff and he would keep running and he didn't start to drop until he looked down. So everything was good until he realized that he was off the cliff. And back in March of 2020, we were in the same place. All the data was looking good, but we knew we'd gone off the cliff. We just hadn't started looking at the data yet, so we hadn't really started to fall. And I'm thinking that right now we're probably in a similar place where with tariffs and with all the stuff that tariffs is going to impact, maybe not as bad as COVID, maybe worse. We don't know at this point. It could end up being worse depending on how long it lasts. But I suspect we're already off the cliff, meaning there's no turning back. And even though we haven't yet seen the data that is telling us that we're starting to fall off that cliff, we're already past the edge of the cliff. And so let's look at a few different things. Number one, retail. I don't know if you guys, I assume you guys probably have, but the listeners, if you haven't been paying attention, a lot of talks of empty ports, basically shipping containers coming from around the world, shipping at 30% capacity, 40% capacity. You're going to hear a lot of this talk of blank shipments or blank sailings, which basically are ships that are leaving ports coming to the U.S. with nothing on them, and those are up by many percent.
Just from China, though, right, Jay? Like it's not like all over the world. Yeah,
correct. This is all China right now that I'm talking about. Other
we're hearing this, or is this actually like?
It's certain ports, AJ. There's certain ports that are.
Yeah, you can go online.
I also read today that the Dallas Fed had come out and said that there was a sharp drop in incoming orders, and that's from the Texas manufacturing outlook survey.
Yeah, geez, Mauricio, we can't give Jay shit for stepping in and interrupting people and changing subjects. And then
AJ was looking for a source, which it should do, and not just say, hey, Jay's making this stuff up. And I was trying to defend Jay and say, hey, there's some backing to this statement.
I was having a long conversation with a friend of mine today where I literally said, I'm trying to find good data on shipping. And I haven't been able to. I'm hearing a lot of anecdotal evidence, a lot of anecdotal stories from people that are familiar with the supply chain saying that we've got a lot of empty ships coming and we've got empty ports. And I went online and I could look at these cameras at the port of Los Angeles and real-time cameras, and the ports were completely empty. But what I said to my friend when I was having this discussion was, I don't know, maybe this is normal for a 2-day in April. So I really can't definitively say that what the data looks like around shipping. But there are a lot of people who are knowledgeable who are starting to say that in a few weeks, we should expect to start seeing more bare shelves at the big box retailers. Places.
Can I throw one side explanation for that?
Absolutely.
So if you looked at the trade deficit, actually, it was like huge for the previous quarter. And everyone's saying that's because people were front running tariffs, right? They were going out and ordering as much as they could in preparation. And so now they've ordered so much in advance that they're going to kind of just pause and they're not going to order as much. So I like, to me, there's probably a little bit of that going on as well.
Very possible. And again, I don't have any good data around empty shelves or shipping containers or whatever. I'm hearing stories, I'm reading stuff from people who supposedly know, but we know that, I mean, don't trust what you read on the internet. So I'm not going to claim to have any real knowledge there, but I think we all can agree that if this tariff thing doesn't get resolved at some point, and whether that's 2 weeks away, 4 weeks away, 3 months away, 6 months away, at some point, we're going to start to see bare shelves on retailers' shelves that rely on a lot of product from China. So again, I don't know the timing of that, but it's going to happen. Next, GDP. We have GDP coming out tomorrow. By the time this drops, it'll have been yesterday. And we don't know what GDP is going to look like. Numbers, projections are all over the board. The Atlanta Fed, who is known to have a good model, is saying it could be negative 1.5%. So GDP contracting, so negative growth. New York Fed is saying it's like 2.7%, and the Philadelphia Fed or some other Fed is saying it's like 3%. So St. Louis, thank you, all over the board. I think the average of all the models, and averages don't mean anything because one of them is going to be right, not all of them, but the averages of all the models is somewhere around growth of 0.4%. So that's the consensus of that we're going to have growth of 0.4%, which is a huge drop from Q4 of last year.
Is that the consensus, Jay? Like if it comes in at 0.4 tomorrow or yesterday, whatever, however you want to say it, does that mean it was in line with expectation? Or if it comes in at 0.4, it's going to be like, oh, holy crap, we're almost at zero.
I don't know what the official consensus is. I don't even know how they determine I'm guessing the official consensus probably comes from the BLS who puts it out. And so I don't know. I can't answer that question. But I'm hearing 0.4% repeated by a lot of places who are kind of aggregating.
I feel like anything positive will be a good market reaction, because like even if you look at like all of these independent, like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, they're all forecasting negative, right? So like if they see a positive number, I think they're all going to be pretty happy.
Yeah, you guys are all wusses and aren't willing to go out on a limb, but I do think you're going to see a negative number. That's my call. I mean, maybe you squeeze in like a barely a positive number, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're in a recession. It's the beginning of the recession, but I think the Atlanta Fed has their projections of 2.9 below. They're probably the most but the fact that they're nowhere near zero and they're literally -3, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're going to see a negative. By the time you hear me say this, you're going to be, yeah, of course, the news already came out, it's negative.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would say they're not going to be surprised by that, but just know that there are plenty of sources, plenty of models out there that are on the other side of that. And so
I think that just points like that. That's kind of a nice little microcosm for the economy as a whole right now, where it's like, depending on the source, like if you want to try and prove that the economy is doing well, you can find enough data to back that up. If you want to try and prove that the economy is doing poorly, you can find enough data to back that up. It just kind of depends on what's your confirmation bias is. And I feel like the GDP is kind of what exactly what that is. There's some people who are showing negative and some people are showing positive, and it's all over the map. And it's people just they have a bias and they're going to have their own statistics that are confirming it. So like, that's, I guess that.
Yeah. And my take is that I believe we're at an inflection point meaning we're transitioning from one state to another, specifically from what's been a relatively good economy for a while to what may now end up being a bad economy. Again, specifically because of what we're seeing with tariffs. Let's move on to the next piece, which is unemployment. Unemployment numbers have been great for a couple of years, including the last couple of months. Unemployment claims, like new people claiming unemployment and people claiming unemployment week after week, has been steady, hasn't been really growing. All those numbers look good. But the reality is, common sense tells us that any employees in the supply chain are at significant risk as time goes on. So think about truckers. I've heard a lot of talk, again, I don't have the specific data, but I've heard a lot of talk that in a couple of weeks, you're going to start seeing millions of truckers laid off. Dock workers. So again, I haven't seen the data for dock workers. if we're seeing container ships coming at 20, 30% capacity and fewer ships, we're going to see dock workers laid off. We're going to see warehouse workers laid off. We're going to see retail workers laid off. And so we're going to see a lot of unemployment all across the supply chain. That's in addition to all these federal workers that we're told are getting laid off. We haven't seen that. I don't know why we haven't seen that yet. Maybe it's because they're still getting paid. Maybe the court.
They were punning. We got, what was it, last month, where we had into March, we had a huge jump in unemployment. And wasn't that largely because of
it was healthcare and it was federal, but it wasn't anywhere near the numbers.
It wasn't as they're predicting, I think, about 275,000 jobs to be cut. And I think right now you've got about, I want to say it was like 30 or 50,000 or something.
Yeah, 45 is the number I remember. So anyway, unemployment, again, the longer that that this tariff thing goes on, the supply chain is going to get decimated, unemployment's going to get hit. Inflation's another one. Inflation.
Yeah, Jay, before you go on the trucker thing, I mean, I did read that, and it's not necessarily related directly to tariffs or anything, but I did see that UPS is going to be laying off a ton of folks. I think it's 22,000 jobs, primarily because they lost the Amazon account, which is their largest account. So you're going to see a lot of truckers be laid off there. But these days, I just think on the trucker side, it's pretty easy to kind of transition over, and you can be an Uber delivery person. I mean, most of my Amazon, I'm probably the most qualified here to talk about Amazon delivery, since we probably get 17 packages a day. And man, I get the deliveries that I get from people, sometimes it's an Amazon truck, but some people show up at 5 a.m. at my door, which pisses me off. And they're like, it's just a private individual who's dropping off stuff at 5 o'clock in the morning. Jolt's almost.
I'm not a long haul trucker, but I suspect there are a lot of long haul truckers who aren't going to be like excited about becoming an Uber driver or an Amazon driver. I mean,
it's better than not working.
Yeah,
100%.
It's a transition. Yeah.
Well, and we know how these numbers come about, right? They're surveys, and people just literally call and say, "Do you have a job?" And there's a big difference. We've talked about there's a big difference between someone who's employed 40 hours versus someone who sells shit on Etsy. Like it's, but they're both considered employed for this purpose. So
yeah. And again, the numbers as of today look good. So I'm not saying the numbers look bad. I'm just saying common sense tells me that the longer that we have this tariff issue with China, the worse those numbers are going to start to look. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But I just don't see a situation where those numbers don't deteriorate very quickly over the next couple of weeks and months. If we want to move on, inflation's another one. Saw really good inflation numbers last month. We actually saw a little bit of deflation across a couple sectors, which is great. And we're likely to continue to see good inflation numbers and maybe even deflation across certain sectors. So, for example, gas. We're likely to see gas come down significantly over the next couple months.
Not in California.
I think we will. And the big reason for that is OPEC announced a couple weeks ago that they're going to increase supply. U.S. oil producers have increased the amount of supply. We've taken about 40% of our oil reserve out now. So our oil reserve is lower than what it was just a few months ago. And so it's very possible that we're going to have a lot of supply in gasoline at the same time when we have a whole lot less demand. Because remember, people are traveling a whole lot less. Truckers are transporting things a whole lot less. And so we're going to get hit on both sides of that. We're going to see a whole lot of supply, a whole lot less demand. And what I'm hearing is that somewhere around the $60 a barrel mark is when oil producers basically say, shut it off.
That's shale, right? The fracking is break evens right around $60 a barrel, right?
No, fracking is much lower. And if you're in the Permian Basin, it is.
Well, I guess this is very old statistics, because I remember this is going back to when the Saudis, when we were turning on fracking full force, and the Saudis just got a little pissed off, and they just flooded the market to push fracking out of the market, right? So they just brought it down below, and they had determined that by putting it below $60 a barrel for long enough, then the fracking would have to start shutting off, and that was going to kind of prove their point. So that's, I don't know what the number is now, but.
And I know you guys care less about California as much as people care less about Canada, but yeah, California has a very unique situation where they have a special gasoline blend that is required, that only in California can they actually produce the gasoline. And we've just gotten word that one of the refineries is leaving California to move to Texas because of all the restrictions. And once you get a refinery contraction, then prices usually go up. So we're expecting California prices to go up. But anyway, that's beside the point, although it does obviously affect
but I mean, so especially in employment, even in transportation, it went up. So transportation companies and trucking companies are hiring. Transportation had one of the larger increases in March and April of new hires. So, like, I think it makes me wonder why would the companies, if they know, why are they hiring?
I mean, so I guess a question I have for you, Jay, is that like what everyone's talking about right now is basically, okay, you have your assumptions if these tariffs stay on, but what about the snapback? What if they figure this out? Is it just going to go back to normal? Is this kind of just a temporary thing? Like, because we already talked about, like, people are front loading, they're preparing for tariffs, and then, you know, we might see a little bit of a dip as they start going. But if 3 months from now, you know, they're at a reasonable amount, like, is that going to solve everything? Or are you saying there's fundamental issues that are just coming to the surface now, regardless of whether tariffs get turned back on or not?
Well, no, I think that has a lot to do with what does that mean, the tariff thing getting fixed. If we can magically turn back to 3 months ago, a couple months from now, yeah, we'll probably see some issues. Again, there are a whole bunch of container ships that are not on their way from China right now. And so we're going to see a drop in supply, at least for some retailers. And so there's going to be a hit for some period of time. I have to imagine that there's already starting to be some layoffs along the supply chain. But if we could magically roll back to 3 months from now and just resume trade with all these countries exactly the way it was, I have to imagine things are going to go back to normal. My concern is that it may never go back to where it was. Are these other countries going to trust us like they did a few years ago? For example, there's a lot of talk that China is now getting all of their imports for beef and something else from Australia. And so do they ever come back to the US? If not, well, that's going to be a hit on agriculture in the US forever, unless US finds new countries to export to. And so there are going to be impacts long term from all of these trade wars. I mean, at the end of the day,
If the tariffs stay in place, though, I guess is my thing. If they don't stay in place and they work out trades and stuff, like, money talks. Like, they're not going to all of a sudden just stop buying from the US just because, oh, they're grumpy that we did the tariff things. No, like, they're not going to just eat millions or billions of dollars. No, if we have a better product for cheaper, they're still going to buy from us.
Yeah, and that's 100% true. I'm not arguing that.
People that deal with countries that are terrorists. Like, you're talking about countries that are negotiating with countries that they're at war with. Like, I mean, it's like, yeah, they may be mad about it, but a tariff, but these are countries that are dealing with Russia. Like, Europe is currently buying Russia commodities while they're telling us that we need to bomb them. Like, they're going to, just because they got tariffed and went back, they're willing to deal with people that literally they believe are going to invade their country.
Money talks, baby.
Money talks.
Yeah, but there are some irreparable, like, I was, you mentioned it, Jay, but I've been reading some anecdotal evidence in terms of like Amazon, for example, right? There was an article that came out, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, like, a lot of people are opting out of Prime Day because of the tariffs. And a lot of folks are already, the folks that are actually manufacturing in China are already making arrangements to go get that manufactured in other countries like Vietnam, or they're doing other stuff. So or Mexico. So even if you just magically unwind everything a month from now or 2 months from now, there are going to be some steps that people have already taken that they're not just going to reverse that stuff because you suddenly change your mind. So there are some consequences.
Oh, absolutely. They're supposed to be. That's the whole point of this. We're literally they're changing the world. Like, I mean, look at everything. It's the entire point of it is to change the way it flows and the way that it works. It's not that there won't be changes, and it's not that it won't even hurt. Of course it's going to hurt. The moment you have changed supply chains, manufacture, on and on and on, there will be contraction, job layoffs, everything else. But it's, once again, that is kind of the point, is to redirect trading partners.
Yeah, and we're all making the assumption that the trade agreements we negotiate with all these countries are going to be better than what we had again 2 months ago, 3 months ago. That may be the case. That may not be the case. So who knows? Maybe China doesn't come to the table and is willing to sacrifice their economy and their people. And
which is a possibility.
It's China. That's what they'll do. They'll let their people starve. They don't care.
Right. And if that's the case, we could end up literally with the worst trade agreement with China after this whole trade war than we had before.
Or we just move. We make it so impossible that we suffer in the short term, and then China we move from. China will win the battle, but they're going to lose the war. And you've already seen this with huge corporations, everything from Apple. Apple cut out a $30 billion one. Everything else, I think China's going to win the battle because they can. They can.
But we all know we all lose the war because the reality is that it's going to cause inflation, and inflation, as we've learned,
if you move it to India, it's 1/5 the cost of China to produce. India is actually cheaper, so a lot of these plants are now moving to other countries, and India is now the government's incentivizing.
Or they white label it, right? Like, isn't that just what happened last time? They sent to Mexico and relabeled it, and then Mexico sent it to us. Like it's not going to. That's why they like 145% tariffs. Like there's no difference between that and 30. At 30% tariffs, they're already sending all their shit to Mexico to get rebranded and sent to us.
So we had this discussion last week that there are a lot of types of manufacturing that you can easily move to another country. If it was cheaper to do that, we live in a capitalist country, we would have already moved it to another country. So if India were cheaper at scale for certain industries, we've already moved to India because business owners, especially large business owners, aren't stupid. They're not
if we haven't invested capital into building it, just like we didn't until we incentivized people to.
Right, but if we have to spend $2, $10, $50, $100 billion to move manufacturing to India, businesses need to recoup that cost, and they're going to pass that on to consumers.
We're spending $1.5 trillion in manufacturing incentives right now.
Right. And so this is going to raise prices. And what we've learned with inflation is once the price of things go up, it doesn't come down. So you can
hear, Jay, I keep hearing this rhetoric that, that tariffs automatically cause inflation. But theoretically, follow me through this one, okay? Theoretically, what's the definition of inflation? It's money supply based, right?
Well, not price inflation. So there's
but if we think about the definition of like there has to be more money in order for there to be inflation. Well, what if there's not more money? Then theoretically
there doesn't have to be more money for price inflation.
Okay, but
Kyle brings up an excellent point.
Let me finish here. So yes, certain goods will inflate, but theoretically, let's just say a zero-based budget. So somebody who spends every single cent that they make on necessities, they don't have any like other expenditures. If all of a sudden the cost of their groceries come up, then they're going to have less to pay on other things, and the demand for those other things are going to go down, and therefore the cost of those things will go down because the demand went down. And theoretically, if the same amount of money's flowing in and flowing out all around, then yes, inflation will be higher on groceries, but something like you brought up gas, the demand for gas, because people won't be traveling to Mexico as much because they're spending more on groceries. Gas is going to go down. The cost of that's going to go down. So net inflation theoretically shouldn't just automatically go up because.
I thought you were going somewhere else with this because which you're absolutely right on what you mentioned, but I thought where you were going, which I hadn't thought of, which I think is an excellent point, which is the definition of inflation, the traditional definition of inflation is the increase or the inflationary of the money supply. So there's more dollars or more currency units chasing the amount of goods. So if something costs $10, right, and suddenly you have all this extra money flowing around, by definition, it's going to go up to, let's say, $15, and that's not going to come down. It's $15 now, basically for the unless you suddenly take money out of the money supply, which is not going to happen. However, if the same thing is $10, but now it's 15 because there's a tariff, there's an artificial, additive put on there, then it's going to go to 15. But as soon as that tariff gets taken off, well, now it should go down to $10 because there's not an increase in the money supply. There's not more currency units chasing the same amount of goods. So I think that's a really good point, which you almost made, Kyle.
I'm saying the same thing, though. Basically, there's no increase in the money supply with the tariff. So theoretically, like it should all even itself out. The money will just shift around. Certain things will get much more expensive, yes, but other things will get cheaper. And I guess that's just something we've never really discussed. as everyone's just assumed, okay, tariffs are going to be inflation.
I'm not going to talk about elasticity in pricing for certain goods, but the reality is that's not necessarily true. If you are a regular consumer and the price of your food goes up and the price of your clothes goes up and the price of your rent goes up and the price of your school supplies go up, you're not going to stop buying any of those things. What you're going to do is you're going to stretch yourself more thin because all of those things are necessities. Certainly for the four of us here, we can say, okay,
You're assuming all those things are going to go up, though.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming that a lot of things are going to go up. I mean, again,
we don't get everything from China.
A perfect example of this, we're talking about 10% increases on goods. We just had a double in prices of everything because of money supply. Like I think we think inflation with tariffs is what happened over the last 4 years of our money supply doubling and printing, housing, everything exploded. It's not even close. Like, it's not even close.
I find it weird we're having a discussion about whether tariffs cause inflation. I'm not going to argue that. I mean, there's
Technically, tariffs cause price increases, not inflation.
price inflation. When I talk about inflation on this show, I'm talking about price. Inflation is an overused term. And yes, in economics, when I got my MBA, when we talked about inflation, it was specifically related to the money supply, and you talk about price inflation separately. I use the term inflation, I mean price inflation. During COVID, we saw inflation on toilet paper. It wasn't because the money supply went up, it's because supply-demand curves changed.
Right.
And so I'm
No,
talking
yeah,
about
but then toilet paper did actually come back down to normal prices. Unlike if it had gone up because of money supply being increased, and it would have continued to be high. But because it was an artificial, not because of money supply, but there was actually a shortage of the product, then as soon as that shortage got fixed, the price came back down to where it was before.
The highest inflationary period the country has ever seen, which was a hyperinflation, products are cheaper than it. So because inflation goes up doesn't mean they'll never come down. That's not true at all. We can have product or price inflation on individual things and prices 100% come back down.
I mean, eggs have been all over the place, right?
All over the place.
I've increased my consumption of eggs exponentially because I've now been able to get out of I was kind of allergic to them, but now I'm not.
All I know is if I look at the basket of goods price between 2020 and today, things are more expensive now. If I look at any period of time,
the money supply rose, and so we had inflation.
But right, and we're always going to have inflation. But my point is that the more inflation that we have, the harder it's going to be for people to catch up. Savings rates go down when inflation.
That doesn't mean tariffs.
Right. I guess my only point was I'm not arguing that we'll see some price inflation, but I'm posing the question because it's difficult these days because everyone kind of just says inflation's going to go up, tariffs. When we're talking about tariffs on China specifically, all of these, because it seems like we're working with almost every other country in order to come up with trade agreements and something's going to figure out. China's the only one we're not. If it ends up being that China, the cost of Chinese goods, like the tariffs are basically on Chinese goods. The goods that come from China or were primarily from China, yes, we will see an increase in prices in those goods. But theoretically, that we could see that offset by other prices and demand for other things going down and the net inflation being the same.
Absolutely. That's called a recession. We saw that in 2008 when people lose their jobs and they get their hours cut.
But we don't know that we're going to lose jobs, though. This idea that we're going to have huge unemployment spike, everything else, which you said would cause the recession the first quarter, which employment actually rose and went up.
I didn't say it was going to cause. I know we did a prediction episode in January. I never said there was going to be a recession in the first quarter.
Regardless,
tariffs don't mean though that we have just mass inflation and we have mass unemployment. That's not how it works.
I said, you guys can disagree. I'm giving you my hypothesis that
I'm not disagreeing, Jay. I'm posing the question because I feel like there's this discussion that was started when all of a sudden every single country was tariffed. and to me, that's one discussion versus what's happening now. I feel like they should be separated. We should have a new discussion. We should relook at this as okay, we have individual tariffs on individual countries, and if we just come up with trade agreements with these other countries that don't involve massive tariffs, and China is the only one, it's not like we're getting all of our necessities from China, or they're primary suppliers of those things. If anything, a lot of the shit that we don't actually need is coming from China. So if the cost of all those things go up, then we might just buy less and of those things, and we might just buy less of other non-necessities, and it might not affect our actual inflation much at all.
Absolutely, it might impact it could impact our standard of living 100%.
We can just import from somewhere else too.
13.5%. That's the amount of goods that we import from China, about 13.5%.
But here's the thing: we have a 10% tariff across the board on all countries. So no matter what we're importing is going to go up at least 10%. We have zero trade deals as of today. And so are we going to have them next week or next month or 6 months from now? I don't know. We might not.
The difference of 10% every 6 months for the last 4 or 5 years, goods have gone up and down more than 10%. Like, it's like this idea. I think that a 10% tariff is going to cause a recession, mass unemployment, right? Like, I'm not saying tariffs are good. I'm not even saying that they won't create price increases. No, absolutely.
They will. They'll create a 10% price increase, or at least, or it'll cause a 10%. It'll be somewhere between a 10% price increase, a 10% drop in margins, or some combination of those two. So either
to create mass unemployment from that, I think that's a really large swing to, in I think, a very extreme area to say we're going to have mass unemployment, mass inflation. Like, that's my disagreement. I don't think it's going to be good. I'm not disagreeing that we're going to have 10% increase. The amount of change alone, where we have to go, it's going to be a transition time, like you said. I 100% agree.
Well, in someone like China, how much are they undercutting the competition, I guess, is the question too, right? Like, if they're only undercutting the competition by a few percentage points, then we're just moving to the competition. But if they have kind of a monopoly on certain goods where they're undercutting them by 50%, like that's a different discussion.
I'm sure there's some goods that, like, literally they monopolize, probably even in production.
Like fake tattoo sleeves. Like I had one of those for my Halloween costume the one year. I'm sure that, like China's probably got a monopoly on
will
those.
Change my
I'm sure we can argue that tariffs aren't going to cause bad stuff. We could probably argue the tariffs are going to cause great stuff, and employment's going to go up and inflation's going to drop. But I'm proposing my hypothetical that if we see container ships stop sailing to the U.S. from China, we're going to see fewer dock workers. We're going to see fewer truck drivers. We're going to see fewer people working in warehouses. We're going to see fewer people who work in retail. That's my hypothesis. I could be wrong. I don't know where in that line of thinking I might be wrong, but that's my line of thinking. And so.
Yeah. But so in your line of thinking, I guess, like, so let's take this out a step further. In your line of thinking, does that shift though, or does that just go away? Because I guess
I'm not saying we're going to have this unemployment forever.
No, Jay, you're acting like I'm attacking you. I'm asking you a question. I'm saying in your line of thinking, does this, like, so we're going to obviously see a dip because we have to restructure. Like there's the immediate reaction is, okay, what we used to do can't happen anymore. And there's going to be an immediate blowback of that, of, I don't know, a few months, 6 months. I don't know how long it's going to be, but we're still going to keep buying shit, and it's going to come from somewhere. And that still needs to get shipped, and that still needs to get transported, and that still needs, like, all those things still need to happen. So is this just going to be kind of one of those, okay, those dock workers for the next 2 months, they're going to have a light load. And we know that, like, we just went through it. Like, companies aren't going to fire people if they believe everything's going to come back, or they won't fire many people. Maybe the temp people they'll get rid of, and then they'll hire those back. But I guess, are we going to see a huge shift right off the bat, or is it just going to restructure itself that instead of getting some of that stuff from China, we're going to get it from Cambodia, or we're going to get it from one of these other countries that has a very cheap labor cost, and then the shipping starts coming back in, and those dock workers go back to work,
Uh,
and everything's good.
Absolutely. And again, I'm not saying this is a forever problem. It'll get solved. But here's the thing. Again, my hypothesis. Is it cheaper to buy these? Let's pick a widget, any widget. Is it cheaper to buy that widget in China or Cambodia?
Tattoo sleeves, fake tattoo sleeves.
Any widget. There's an easy way to know if it's cheaper to get it in China or Cambodia. You ask yourself, where are we getting it? Again, capitalism. Business owners aren't dumb. They're buying it from the place right now where they
If
can
that
get it.
was true, we'd still be getting things from the same place we've always gotten them. Like, we would have never gone to China. We would have never gone anywhere
No,
else.
I'm not saying they don't get cheaper in other places. They do get cheaper in other places. But right now, if we're getting widgets from China, there's a reason we're getting widgets from China. If Kyle and I are starting on a ground up new construction build, we're not going to go to the third cheapest place to buy lumber. We're going to buy lumber in the cheapest place because we want the best price. And if suddenly we can't get it from that cheapest place, we have to get it from someplace else, by definition, it's going to be more expensive. Does that mean that supply chains can't shift over 5 and 10 years and there can't be capital investments of billions of dollars that bring the price down? Certainly there can, but that's going to be amortized over many years and a lot of product. And so building these factories in Cambodia versus China for some period of time.
And I think
Well,
that's,
what about
and that's the important. Let me just real quick. That's the important part. Which a lot of the stuff does take time. I mean, we've been focusing more on the retail side, but think about all the stuff that comes into China that are really parts of a piece, not the whole piece. Like iPhones has been in the news a lot, right? So a lot of the iPhones are manufactured in China. Can they move that somewhere else? Yes, but that takes time. Electric vehicles. I read a stat
Nope.
that
26. Apple said by 26 up running delivering,
They said they're moving to India by 2026,
and they'll be producing.
Got it. So that's going to be a year and a half off.
18 months.
18 months. Got it.
Yep.
And then what about, electric vehicles? I read a stat the other day that 75% of all batteries come from China. So yes, we can produce them in India, but it takes time to go build a factory in India so they can start building batteries. It's not something that we suddenly go from, hey, let's start buying batteries
we
in
can
India.
take it down granular too. They need supplies to build the batteries too, right? And where do those come from? And supply chains are built around, okay.
So I'm not saying supply chains can't shift, but they don't shift for free. And if it was cheaper to build something somewhere else right now, all in, amortized over the cost of building the manufacturing facilities and the tooling, then we'd already be doing it. And so by definition, the fact that we have to move it means it's not currently cheaper in the place we're moving it to, and there's going to be cost, there's going to be time associated with it, and maybe one day it'll be cheaper, and maybe one day it'll be better, but we don't know that.
So Jay, do you have, can I shift this to U.S. manufacturing discussion then?
Sure.
Because the question is too, like when we talk about these tariffs, one of the major selling points of the tariff was actually reshoring a lot of this stuff, right? Like it was not necessarily, we're talking about, the stuff coming from China, moving to Vietnam or Cambodia or one of these other, that you typically see some of these cheaper items. But then there was also manufacturer onshore. If we tariff some of these things, what's been in the news most is this steel and aluminum, stuff like that, then we can ramp up our manufacturing onshore and we can improve those jobs and those outputs here. But recently, like manufacturing, the headlines haven't been that kind lately. Most recently with Dallas Fed reporting that the Texas Manufacturing Index is its lowest level since 2020. But tariffs are supposedly supposed to help bring that back. And one of the reasons I love having AJ here is we, like, as far as subscribing to data and where we get data sources from, I'll admit I'm very granular in looking at stuff that affects us and multifamily and the markets that we're in. But AJ goes out and he pays for a crap ton of other data, and he always has different perspectives on things. And so AJ was saying that it's starting to show in the form of new manufacturing facilities are already starting to pop up, even this quickly. And if true, manufacturing growth could lean to boost in select cities and therefore local real estate and stuff like that. So it's interesting to me that we could potentially, as real estate investors, be front running some of these areas that manufacturing is already starting to boost. So AJ, why don't you talk about that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so we've been tracking this in the firm for years, has nothing to do with tariffs, anything else like that. This is actually something like a lot of people see it, talk about it now. The bringing back manufacturing to the United States that everybody's like, hey, it was actually Biden who's really pioneering this. So a lot of these starts and everything were under Biden. So this is not like, of course, if you read the news, you think, oh, blah, 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 it's a political thing. It's not. So we've had literally right now in 2025 as what has started, and starting in 2025, it's somewhere between $1 to $1.2 trillion, which a huge majority of that came from Biden. And that is a combination of government incentives plus private industry. Private industry is what really moved in the last little while that we've seen. So each project, depending on its timeline, right, where it's coming, the CHIPS Act was massive, as well as other incentives. The United States government, what they've done is they've outlined a whole bunch of industries that we were not competitive in because they were subsidized by other governments. This is one of the reasons why China is getting penalized and has not been a fair player. So what China has done is called dumping. China subsidizes industries at a net loss until the supply chains and the infrastructure go away. Then they can jack up prices. So what they do is they're creating artificial monopolies. They're able to do this because way back when they were classified as a developing nation, right? And so they had special things, but they basically, it was Obama, Biden, and obviously Trump, but were criticizing China because they just wouldn't play by the rules, and they stopped doing it. COVID, this is where it really started. We saw massive weaknesses within the United States. We're talking these chips to run our military. At today's level, right, the United States ignored a whole bunch of weak points, which is hilarious to me, by the way, that we offshored to our adversary. China is not a friend. They are an adversary of the United States.
Can I
They
ask
do
you a
not
question?
obey.
Does the U.S. do the same thing? Does our government subsidize industry to force it to grow and then raise prices?
Yeah, that's what we're doing now. That's called the CHIPS Act. Yeah, we absolutely do.
Agriculture is always the most famous one. How much
Agriculture, there's all sorts of other
But
industries.
you said that China wasn't playing fair by doing this. Does
Yes,
that mean-
they do what's called dumping. Dumping is different. And this is something that, here, I can pull it up. The Worldwide Trade Organization, they have repeated offenses on dumping. Hold on. I can pull up into dumping here in just a second. But
I believe you, AJ, if you want to move on.
So, we can talk about it because it's actually really important and how the World Trade Organization looks at this. And so we have Taiwan and a few other ones were also very similar in their subsidies. There's some things that's just what countries do, foreign countries, right? Now, China had gotten into a bunch of trouble. More importantly, though, it is the security. So China is an adversary. They're not our friends. It's strange that this country that lets people starve to death lies about it. And one of the ways that they subsidize products is forced labor. This is bad stuff that we've all looked away. Why? Because of greed. We wanted cheap stuff. Well, that was okay until it ran into a security issue. And we really found out in COVID how much we depended now on China and how much these subsidies, everything else, had consolidated these supply chains. So Biden, being very critical of this, started to move away, which was exactly what they should have been doing. The CHIPS Act, as well as others. The Biden administration started putting huge amounts of pressure on corporations and talking to them about investing, and Apple was actually one of them. So what happened was all of this started and had been going. The government started to subsidize. We started to build infrastructure, and it was a huge thing, right? Trump has taken this to like a whole nother level where he just went nuclear bomb basically on China. But what it's really shown is there's a shift in the way the United States views China. It is not like it. We've had the last 3 presidents who have been literally saying they're going to sanction, right? They're doing backdoor deals with Russia. And it started not politically Democrats or Republican. They've both been doing it. Biden was the first one to be outspoken. Bush didn't care as long as he was getting to play golf. But Obama really came out strong against him. And so we've had this kind of boiling pot with our infrastructure and with the world trade and what's been going on.
So is the growth that you're talking about, is this kind of from the previous subsidies and that was working effective? So are tariffs really anything to do with what's going on, or we just haven't yet seen the?
Yes, we're seeing way more. That escalated it to a huge amount. Now, to give you any idea how much we're talking about, it is, as of today, it is the largest increase. The last few years has been the largest resurgence of manufacturing spending the United States has ever seen, ever. And this allocation of capital, everything else coming in, it's not obviously ending anytime soon. We've talked about AI, batteries, things like that. Apple, $500 billion. Tesla, they've been incentivized to start to build. And then the chips and other ones are being subsidized. You have Hyundai, Johnson & Johnson, the total amount that is already started or planned just for 2025. And this is important. And the reason it's important is twofold. There's also a joke going around that, oh, well, yeah, that's because we are bringing back and we're going to all be building iPhones, things like that. The vast majority of manufacturing, and the ones that are coming, pay $38 an hour. That's the average. $38 an hour. They are not only above, they're 3 times the minimum wage of all states. The vast majority of manufacturing is actually skilled labor.
So let's talk about that, because that was my question that I was trying to find a spot to ask you this question. And so you brought it up, which is perfect. But I just pulled it up. The average wage in China is about $2 to $5 an hour. In India, it's $1.75 an hour. And in Mexico, it's $4 or $5 an hour. And maybe I'm way off or whatever. That's what I read today. You're saying now the US is at $38 an hour. How does the manufacturing coming back not?
Well, not only that, Mauricio, take it a step further. We're talking about safety regulations. How much money do all these companies spend on just safety regulations and keeping up OSHA regulations?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So how does that not translate? I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying, how does that not translate into much higher prices for the goods that they're manufacturing from?
So there's a few ways and reasons. It's not all goods and services, obviously. That's never going to happen. This idea that the United States is going to become this manufacturing utopia and we're going to be making widgets, that's not true. That's actually not what we're even trying to attract. Most manufacturing is actually skilled labor. And there's huge perception issues that we have with this, where it's not. It actually is. This is one of the problems that we have with actually getting somewhere where we can get manufacturing from. So when you choose a country, it's not about cheap labor or even infrastructure for the majority of manufacturing. It is about skilled labor. So when you look at that in the United States with the products and everything they're manufacturing, what it takes per output, so per unit output, today in manufacturing is a fraction of what it was just 15 years ago. That is due to robotics, AI, and everything else. So first of all, the skilled labor in manufacturing, guess why? They're robot workers. That's literally what they're doing. So they're not building the things, they're operating on robots, software, everything else. And
you literally see it in some industries. I can think of an exact example because it happened close to my hometown, where they raised the minimum wage for restaurant workers, and it was actually coffee shops, like Tim Hortons was the big one in our area, and they raised the minimum wage. So what do you think happened? You just saw those iPads pop up more. There was more robots ordering. There was more self-serving, and that's going to need more people to repair these, run these, be more skilled in order to program them and stuff. But it's going to be less unskilled labor. It's going to be
what you're saying is that in the old days it would take you 100 people to run the operations, but today it only takes you 10 people because it's relying on all this AI and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so
this idea that we have all these people lined up in assembly lines, chip and stuff like that, for the vast majority, that is not what's happening anymore, or even needs to happen.
It still happens though. I worked on one of those
absolutely. It absolutely still happens. And that's why China has forced labor. So
it still happens even in the US too. And
let's also be clear, there's another axis to this, which is anybody can make a promise. Let's use Apple as an example. Apple said they were going to invest $350 billion back in February of 2017, a month after the election. They invested very little during Trump's first term. In April of 2021, 3 months after Biden was elected, they said they were going to invest $430 billion in the U.S. They did
The big one yesterday was IBM. Monday announced they're going to invest $150 billion over the next 5 years. Like it's such a random number.
That's why I only used 2025 committed and started. That's not including anything outside that time frame. So if you want to get started on that, it's a way bigger number. And one of the big things, but of course, companies can promise, right? Everything else like that, I agree. Who knows what they'll do? But the most fascinating thing to me was in February, we had over $200 billion of foreign investment poured into the United States. In that number, that was bigger than all of the annual amount in 2023. So in a time where our markets are going haywire, everything else, we had the highest inflow of foreign capital in a month than we did in a year in 2023.
So I guess, AJ, my biggest question on this is this a sustainable trend, I guess is the thing, because it seems like this has been going on for a while, and it was probably put in motion more so with subsidies because Biden didn't have tariffs. I mean, he kept some of Trump's tariffs, but he wasn't implementing any new tariffs. And so it seems it's more driven by subsidies. And I guess my concern with what's going on.
This is not only sustainable, as you can see on the screen, it is gaining more and more and more. We had a month in both labor and construction spending that went down in this year due to the what's it called when they had the labor movements, everything else. And so we had like job losses, things like that. But this is a pre-COVID world we're talking about. The global order is rechanging, and it's not because Trump just jumped in. This is a new way of thinking due to security, all this other stuff that's going on. And this started in the Biden administration. What's really getting hit is the private sector and penalizing people for taking capital out and put it in and going after countries that don't play ball. Basically, it's if you're an adversary, why in the world are we allowing all our companies to go there, invest billions and tens of billions of dollars in adversaries' countries, right? So they're trying to restructure that global order.
I know why.
It's not a change.
Because
Are you just raising your? Are you raising your hand?
I'm raising my hand.
I don't pick you, Jay. I pick
Just
Marissa.
raise your hand.
I'm answering he asked the question. I'm answering the question. The reason why we allow that is because this is capitalism, and so I think it's
No, they're not. They're communist.
No, we have capitalism in our country. Business owners should be allowed to go and do whatever.
Capitalism isn't capitalism when it's one side. That's not how it works.
I remember when the argument was that government shouldn't interfere in private business and tell private business, but you're saying it should. You're saying
no, I'm saying it does.
Okay, so you agree with me that it's bad that we're trying to stop private businesses in the U.S. from manufacturing overseas.
Why would I think that it would be bad that you shouldn't manufacture overseas?
No, I said the government tilting the playing field to stop businesses from doing it.
I believe capitalism is you do what others are doing. It's a two-sided street.
Well, no. The government. Capitalism means the government stays out of private business.
That's not what capitalism means. Capitalism is an economic function, not a political one, Jay. There's no such thing as a political function.
We're talking about economic. Tariffs are economic. Tariffs are not political. And so the government is picking winners and losers.
Well, it depends on the purpose.
But you're talking about we believe in capitalism. We do. But capitalism is an economic structure. It's not a government one. Europe has capitalism. So when you say we believe in capitalism, so they shouldn't do that, that doesn't make sense. Capitalism is an economic function, not a government structure.
It is 100%. And so the government interfering in private business is anti-capitalistic.
Well, it depends on the purpose, though. Like, it's.
So you don't believe we should have any regulations, and you don't believe that our governments should work with other governments, even though they're adversaries, to do trade and other things like that? You don't believe that?
Our government should not be choosing winners and losers and forcing businesses to adhere to what the government thinks is important in terms.
I guess that's where I disagree. So when we just take, like, when you talk about steel, like if we have to get all our steel from China because they're the cheapest supplier, and then all of a sudden we go to war with China, we can't build any planes because we can't get any steel, and that's an issue.
We've talked about this, and I think we all agree, and I just assumed that this was outside. We all agree that anything that's related to national defense can be socialized.
Or even food. Like, we want to be able to supply our own population with food if we need to.
Right. I believe that anything that's related
What
to
about clothes? Should we be able to clothe our citizens? What about
but here's my point. My point is that is socialism, the government interfering in private business.
Where's the line? Right.
Right.
No, but see, here's the line. It's easy. We can't, as capitalist society, you don't get to work with that other government, the government. You're not talking about the same government system that capitalism is working in is different than two different government entities doing trade. That's not the same thing.
I don't understand. If I have a private business, if I'm selling something and I want to go to China to manufacture that, why should the government have any say in?
Because we don't get to control it. We don't live in China. We're not a Chinese government. We have no say in what they do.
I think the point is that they're trying to say that you don't have two. In order for the capitalism to work, you need both of the systems to be capitalist. Is that what we're saying?
I would love it if China would be more capitalist. We don't control our adversaries. We don't control
that has
anything
nothing
they do.
No, that has nothing to do with my business. If my business wants to buy something from a communist country or a socialist country or an island with penguins, why should I not be allowed to do that?
You
It
are.
depends.
You just have
Once
to
again,
pay
it
the
depends.
price.
Why should I be penalized by my government for
Because
doing
the
that?
government has to do trade with other and structure agreements. The same reason we don't want bombs being manufactured and moved around.
I'm not talking about national security. I'm talking about widgets.
I think trade is national
where
security.
do you draw the line with national security?
Exactly.
Like, if
Trade's
you're
national security.
Okay, so that's fine. So if we agree that socialism is good and the government should be choosing winners and losers, that's fine. Let's just say that.
Well, Jay, it's not that though. Like, we live in an age where if we have an adversary, or if we go to war with someone, we don't just send troops to their shores and attack them. We do it economically, and so we want to be able to. There's a difference between our allies and our adversaries, and China's an adversary right now. Yes, we have friendly trade with them at the moment, but they're an adversary, and so to say that we shouldn't have different rules when it comes to someone like China, who's an adversary.
Okay, how about Canada? There's tariffs on Canada.
Yeah.
So why should there be tariffs on Canada? If I can make something cheaper in Canada, then I can
do
make
it.
but I can't because the government is imposing a tax.
Well, we've talked about this too. I feel like there's two different purposes with the tariffs in Canada and the tariffs in China. The tariffs in Canada, I think we've agreed, are probably more along the lines of a negotiation tactic to get a different trade deal than a long-term thing, versus China seems more like a long-term play due to their status with us politically. So I feel like we should separate that out.
Hold on real quick. I don't understand what we're talking about, because you say you don't want the government to get involved, but the private sector doesn't create trade negotiations with other. That's like saying that I don't want water to be wet.
But I don't want the government to set up lateral trade agreements with other countries that impact me.
Yeah, I don't want water to be wet.
I want to. So we've discussed this. We've discussed this back and forth quite a few times in this podcast. So I want to bring it back a little bit to the topic where tariffs affecting manufacturing and the effect of. So like we could discuss about like, okay, taking manufacturing away from China by tariffing them, and that could push it to other countries that are more of our allies. and that's fine too. But what about bringing it back on share? Onshore? Are these tariffs the things? Are they going to lead to us doing more onshore, or was that kind of already a trend with the subsidies and these tariffs? Because I guess I look back, and to me, when you look at tariffs are in that sense, they're protectionism, right? You're trying to protect an industry. And when the most recent, like we kind of have some statistics on this, because you can go back all the way to the the 1800s, or you could just go back to the last time where it was with the steel, right? We did implement steel tariffs in 2018, and they did have effects, and we technically did produce a little bit more steel. We got 3,000 more jobs, or 3,200 more jobs out of it. But the success of what you're going to call a success, it was kind of a mixed bag on that, because, Ford famously came out and said it's costing them $1 billion additional, just their company, because of the cost increases of steel due to the tariffs that were coming from onshoring. And protectionism in general isn't good, right? Like it kind of, it allows firms to be like less innovative because they don't have as much competition. It hinders them collaborating with other companies who are, technology wise. It depresses productivity. Studies have shown that productivity goes down because it doesn't have to get pushed. So I guess when we're talking about as a whole that we're seeing manufacturing going up, are we expecting tariffs to increase this in these industries, or is this, to the statistics that you're throwing out, AJ, is that just kind of from an overall trend of was started by previous administrations going back a few different administrations?
It's both. So once again, the tariffs, everything has only been like 3-4 months, but even then we've already shifted. So capital, it's going to do what it does, right? But it's also important to know that when we say manufacturing, that word is just like, it's hard to even classify that, because you're talking about the difference of high tech stuff to rubber ducky, right? So what manufacturing is coming back, and what we're seeing is way more surrounding these supply chains of security. Now you say that like, oh, that's only a few things. That's actually incredibly large, because those are the same things that are connected to lots of day-to-day stuff that we all use that is just normal. So what we're seeing is a lot of tech manufacturing, infrastructure manufacturing, all of that come back. So when tariffs are coming in, it's a dual kind of incentive thing. We're not seeing a return, though, of rubber duckies. That's going to India or somewhere else. So it's the type of manufacturing, hence the reason why the amount that is being paid these aren't minimum wage jobs. These are skilled worker jobs. And the tune, though, once again, of this is incredible. It's massive. It is completely reshaping cities and economies in the United States. If you are a real estate investor and you are in Phoenix and you're in Boise, you're in North Carolina, you're in here, I have a whole map plotted out of these. It will reshape.
Talk to me about the map, AJ. Talk to me about the map, because I feel like finally we're getting to the point that I thought we were going to be talking about, which is really what is the real estate impact on this reshoring of manufacturing? Because to your point, we need to build facilities, we need to build warehouses, we need to bring labor, and that's going to drive or really affect.
But I also want to know, is it going to sustain? Is it going to be sustained growth in these areas? Because when I look back historically, I can't, and you'd really dive into, you can have, obviously a lot of people on one side right now are saying tariffs, they're going to point to certain statistics of how tariffs have helped the economy grow over the centuries.
Yeah, once again, it simply depends. So this isn't like, when we're looking at this, you guys, we say manufacturing, I mean, it's not like that. It's not simple like that. So once again, if you're talking about making shoes, things that aren't sustainable, yes, what we're talking about, what we look at specifically, is areas in which capital and things that are coming in are taking certain types of sectors back. Nobody's trying to bring back manufacture for rubber duckies that's not sustainable. This is mass capital injection to create high-end facilities with skilled workers. That's what we're seeing. And that is actually good. What's happening is the capital's building it here instead of elsewhere, right? And that's really good. So when we look at it, this isn't a map of obviously all of them. These are select industries with $1 billion plus in the individual development. A lot of these are over $100 billion plus dollars. The total employment of this is hundreds of thousands. The individual region, though, of it, you talk about one facility that adds 10,000 people on a grand scale, that doesn't look like a ton. But when you're out here in Jacksonville or, Clarksville or wherever it is, 5,500 employees a lot of times is. They're building on the outsides of these cities, and it is reshaping the landscape of these markets completely. And if you look at the average income right now of North Phoenix, they are hiring on 5,000 employees. The average income's over $100,000. This is a mass economic boom of infrastructure and things that will change the region of these areas.
It's funny you say that, because we're doing a development right now, and they're putting an Amazon distribution center literally across the highway. And our first thought when we saw that was like, oh, it's a distribution center. It's going to be all these low paid, unskilled people. But then you look at the average salary at a place like that is like $110,000.
There's such a perception issue in the news, media, things like that, which is not real to what's actually happening on the ground. First of all, once again, oh, this is just a Trump thing. These are long-term trends. We are moving away in certain major industries to the tunes of trillions of dollars. These will keep going. They've been going on for 3 years. They're going to keep going. Tariffs are absolutely speeding that up. And it's that commitment that's coming in even more. These are high-skilled, good-paying jobs for the most part. We're not talking about rubber ducky plants. Those are going to India or somewhere else. That's not what we're talking about here. So the plants in that investment, you guys, is absolutely revitalizing economies. They're hiring, we're talking hundreds of thousands of workers, good paying jobs. If you are investing in these regions, it is transforming major cities in the United States.
And to put that in perspective, in the context, over the last 3 years, 100 million square feet of buildings, warehouses, infrastructure has gone in, and there's another 100 million square feet that are in progress right now in 2025. So there's clearly a lot of dollars, which means, i.e., jobs, which means people moving to that area, which means price appreciation or increase in demand for the housing around that area. So if you're a real estate investor, I'm not saying that's just one way you could attack it, but if you're looking at areas of where to invest, taking a look at this trend,
it's big. Look at Boise, Idaho, where
it's a data point, right? Like when you analyze cities, you can't just say, okay, this one thing is happening in the city, I'm going to go and invest there. But as far as data points along the line, it's going to push up certain cities over others, or it's going to put certain cities on the map that you weren't even considering. And you're going to go and take a look at it. But if you go and take a look at it, and even if it has increased manufacturing, but it's been bleeding population for the last 20 years, then you're going to say, okay, this is maybe a little bit early to get into this. Maybe let's wait a few years and see how this shakes out. But if it's already was kind of on the cusp, you're seeing 1% population growth, and this is going to head it, put it up in the 2% range. That's something to consider.
Like, I mean, look at not only the consumption levels. So you have the front end and the back end. The front end being all of the workers that it takes to build, right, and do all of that. But then what we look at is the overall. So the ongoing production. We're looking at the skilled workers. We're looking at the areas where they're living, how much they make, families, everything else, to actively keep running the plants, not just the spike. So you got to be careful that you don't go, because the economic activity of putting in $100 billion plant is astronomical. So you got to make sure it's on steady. But if you're putting in $100 billion plant like they are in 5 of these cities in Texas, North Carolina, Phoenix, and Idaho, you're talking thousands of employees.
AJ, I'm not moving to Idaho. Doesn't matter how many times you mention it. I'm not moving to Idaho.
That's okay. You can move to Texas. Keep going to Texas. So it not only revitalizes, creates good paying jobs, but this is a shift that we have not seen in the United States for 20, 30 years. So what we're looking at in a post-COVID world is critical infrastructure and manufacturing with skilled laborers, workers to be reallocated and looked. And that's, if you're an investor today and you're looking at which cities are winning these contracts, there has to be a few reasons. They need infrastructure for the big ones. You can't just go put this in podunk, town, because they need access, colleges, right? All of the stuff. This will be a wave for a lot of these cities for a decade. And it changed. And this is a lot. We're talking about, out of there, we listed out 50 cities in the United States that were second tier, third tier, and fourth tier. We didn't find any like that.
AJ, like, I don't know how quickly you can look this up, but are there any of these cities that are more than an hour outside of a major city and have less than 500,000 people?
Yes, there's one right in Atlanta. So outside Atlanta that has 60,000 people. It's a suburb of Atlanta. You have a Hyundai plant outside of Savannah, Georgia.
I'm not doing car plants. Not falling for that one again.
Well, you talked about North Phoenix. I mean, I was in Phoenix a couple weeks ago, and I was up in North Scottsdale. I don't know if that's a different area, but North Scottsdale, there's just a ton of land up there that is just available for this stuff. I don't know if things are going on up there.
It's wild when you go on site and see what's happening. It blows you. They are building cities. And a lot of the car ones though that you're talking, like the outside Atlanta, you have the Rivian one. When we think of cars, we think like tires, things like that. A lot of these now are batteries. They're batteries or they're specialty parts. They're not necessarily assembly, right? So it's just a part of it that requires the skilled labor. So it kind of depends on which project, which city you're looking in.
AJ, can you find me a city that has 400-ish thousand people that has manufacturer coming in it? Because I looked into this one time.
You're already in Texas. Go to Taylor. The Samsung plant's being built in Taylor. I'd have to look how much that was on our list a while ago. Let me look. I know though that because I
was reading that basically once a city hits that critical threshold of 500,000 or more people, then that gets on the radar of certain infrastructure and certain larger companies, and that if you can watch and look for cities that are growing and they're growing to the point where they're going to hit that and close to it, then that's a good place to go. And I called Bentonville, Arkansas, home of Walmart. Jay will back me up here saying this is going to be one of the places that blows up because there's about 420,000 people and it was growing. And I tried to push our team and we were a little bit scared. And it already jumped the shark. It's way too expensive there now. So I'm trying to find the next diamond in the rough.
When you say team, are you talking about Ashley and Jay?
No, there was more people than that. But when you say who shut it down, I don't want to point fingers on that one.
So I think a few ones that you should look at, we talked about the Apple one, right? They're 250,000 square foot. You got to be careful because the Apple one that you break around this year, they'll be done in 2026. It's already set, scheduled. They're part of their $500 billion initiative. So this first, one of their ones that speaking of, or looking at their server facilities don't have a lot of people. So
right.
You got to be careful. Okay, they're putting
and they don't have a lot of. They're not shipping things in and out either.
Bingo.
They're not
exactly. So out of that 500 billion, out of their projects, some will be more based on just pure infrastructure servers with the tech company, whereas others have to do with actual phone manufacturing and needs a lot more skilled workers. And so really looking and trying to make sure that that's going to work. But there are a lot of them too. There's multiple. So you got Houston, you have Austin that have already been bought. They already own them and they're building them, at whatever it is. And that's million plus square feet sites that are going to be all sorts of different stuff.
Well, cities like that, because we're intimate, we have intimate knowledge with Houston. The difference between a city like that versus New York City is obviously the quintessential example. Houston, when they want to grow, like they just grow. Like they just go out further. They just move in certain areas. Like and Houston's actually an anomaly with their zoning. They have no zoning. So you could just grow. If you want to grow, you could just grow, versus there's certain areas that are geographically have issues of, they'd have to kind of more go up than out. So when it comes to manufacturing, you kind of have to look at those cities too. How quickly and how easily can they just, add plants and grow?
Yeah. There's one of the things you can look at too, everybody, if it is connected to the government, there's actually a deployment schedule. And so if you're looking at it, you can actually go see. So if the contract was granted, you can look and see what that government contract has in it as far as timing. So there's certain allocations, certain times that they need to be done and repeated back. So you can actually go look at those contracts to understand where those projects are and where they're coming in.
And whether they can get doged.
And whether they can get doged or not.
That's wrapping up, right? Please tell me. Doge is wrapping up. I think Elon's gone at the end of the month, isn't he? So we can go back to, I can drive my Tesla around and people can stop flipping the bird at me.
Yeah, you might not get it caught on fire.
All right. Well, I'm sure if you pay attention to AJ over the next few months, I'm sure AJ, since he's done all this research, he's going to be providing a bunch of really good content. I'm going to be picking his brain for sure on this too, because I want to find that next diamond in the rough. So
we did one in surprise, $50 million we put in there, and it is filling up like crazy. So the growth in that city alone, because of this, it went right when interest rates went up, everything else, everything slowed down to like 1. It's in our area at 6% growth right now.
Nice.
Average home is $500,000. Average income is over 120,000-130,000.
So if you put in the work, you can find them. But who knows? We might have, when this comes out, we might have GDP at 6%. Who knows? So
absolutely, I'm betting on that.
All right, we ready to wrap this up?
Are we skipping the top 10 and going straight to the would you rather?
Would you rather?
Do you have a good would you rather, Mauricio?
I do not. Would you rather go to plugs immediately, or would you rather?
No, actually, Mauricio, fine. I have 2 top 10 lists. I'll let you pick.
Oh wow,
between them,
because one's not good enough every week, so we have to do 2.
Well, no. You pick which one you want me to do. Because I did find this website called thetop10s.com, and so I was scouring it a little bit today. So I thought maybe in light of the Canadian election, we could do the top 10 greatest.
Nobody cares about the Canadian election.
Top 10 greatest Canadian actors is one option, or the top 10 most hated people in history.
Top 10 most hated people in history. That's got to be interesting.
It actually is interesting because there's some people you would expect, and there's some randos on the list.
Am I on that list?
Taylor Swift is on there somewhere.
Taylor Swift's on that list.
So this is all based off of voting. So this is a site where people just go on and vote, and they vote for their worst, and that's how it's tabulated. So you could see some of these people are very well founded that they're on this list for being hated, and others you're kind of like, oh, come on, really? So
Bill Cosby.
I'll start all the way up at the top. I'm going to start with number 11 because I'm going to skip one because I don't even want to talk about it. Kanye West. I feel like he's deserving recently of being one on the top 10 most hated, so I moved him up.
Is this a top hated of Americans or like in history? Like, are we competing? Are we competing with Adolf? Are we competing with Adolf? Are we competing with Adolf Hitler?
No, just follow me through. This is most hated in history. It includes historical people. So Kanye West is pissed off enough people that he has made the list.
That's a sad world that he's on that list.
I'm sure this is skewed American because, everything gets skewed American when it talks to voting, online voting. But Americans, I feel like, are the most trolls of anyone. Number 10, George W. Bush. Number 9, Saddam Hussein. Very, very, I feel like that's justified. All right, I won't skip them because I feel like most people, I had to kind of remember who this guy was. It's Heinrich Himmler. He was a Nazi dictator. But not as talked about. Number 7. Who do you think number 7 is? Donald J. Trump. Number 7 made the list. Most hated. Number 6, Mao Zedong. So at least he didn't beat Mao. Number 5, Kim Jong Un. Number 4, Joseph Stalin. Number 3, this one's hilarious. Number 3, Justin Bieber.
He beat Stalin and nice. That's great.
Stalin and Kim Jong Un and Mao Zedong.
That makes. I mean, that's kind of just.
I mean, if you ask, there are 7. First of all, there are 7 billion people on this planet. I guarantee you that 6.9 billion don't even know who he is.
Yeah, but the other 0.1 billion hate him.
Number 2, Osama bin Laden, and then number 1, Adolf Hitler. But hey, Justin Bieber made the top 3.
Made the top 3, baby.
And Justin Bieber also on a crossover list of most famous Canadians. So there you go.
We should come up with our top 10 list of people that are not on that list that should be on that list. Like
I'm making that list next year.
Who's that Syrian guy?
There's 10 people that can probably beat all of them except maybe Stalin and Adolf Hitler.
Like I'm thinking of that Syrian guy, the president of Syria, the dictator of Syria. Like what's his name? Like Al-Assad or whatever his name is.
So let's go past the top 10. Like, but there's some funnier other ones. But it gets a little bit more. But like Pol Pot guy from Cambodia, who basically what he kill like 1.5 million people in like 3 years. He should be up there.
What about Jeffrey Dahmer? I don't know. Like, there's a whole bunch of people I can think of that would beat Justin Bieber.
16. So Tom Brady, though, he barely sneaks in the top 20, number 19.
What about Grant Cardone? He's pretty good.
I haven't seen it. Actually, Vlad the Impaler, 21. Jack the Ripper, 22. Hillary. So Trump will feel good that he beat Hillary in this, too. Hillary was only 24. And then rounding up the top 25, Lady Gaga. So I will... Jay, I want you to send yourself an email, and I want to hear Jay's top 10 most hated people from Jay, voted by Jay. I want to hear the most
dictated, directed by.
Yeah. Produced, directed, written by Jay Scott. I want to hear the top 10 hated people.
I can promise you don't know any of them.
Hitler's not going to make the list? Hitler's not going to make your list?
I find that hated is just a weird word. Like that to me is personal. Like people that
no personal hatred towards Hitler. You're Jewish, man.
So again, it's when I'm talking about like has done something to me personally. Yes, obviously, if it's like if you said people I could go and kill, Hitler's the top of my list. But like if it's just people I could like screw over, I've got a long list of
that's probably more interesting. So I want to hear that list too. All right. Do you have an hypothetical, or we could just go to plugs?
I'll do a quick one. You can get $1 million a year, or you never have to sleep.
Ooh, never have to sleep. I think
never have to sleep. Absolutely.
Yeah, never have to sleep. That would be worth bazillion.
God, I love sleeping. I'm taking $1 million.
Yeah, but you wouldn't love it though. That's the point. If you never have to sleep, you wouldn't love sleeping. You'd never feel tired.
I don't need to feel tired to enjoy sleep.
Just think about that feeling. Like I'm feeling it right now. I'm starting to feel a little bit tired. I would never have that feeling.
I just had coffee. I'm not tired at all, but I'm really excited about getting to go to sleep in another hour or two.
But you wouldn't feel that. You wouldn't be excited because you wouldn't have the feeling of being tired and wanting to go to sleep.
It's like if I told you you had to go hibernate right now, you'd be like, I don't have any desire to go hibernate for 6 months. Like I don't know.
That sounds awesome. Like 6 months, I would love that.
I say that. First of all, I think the right answer is to never have to sleep. But now that I'm thinking about it, like if you just give me that option, the lazy option is $1 million, right? $1 million a year. That's a lazy option. I'd probably take it. But
I'd get bored.
Dude, I think our productivity of that extra, between the sleep and the prepare to sleep and the prepare to get up, the morning routine, all that shit, that's like a good 10 to 12 hours.
So my freshman roommate in college. He read this study or this book or something that led him to try this sleeping 15 minutes every 4 hours. So he would sleep like, what is that, an hour and a half a day, but it was 15 minutes every 4 hours. So he scheduled his entire semester around being able to come back and sleep for 15 minutes every 4 hours. And he did it for months. And he ended up stopping doing it because literally he got bored. Like he was up all night, nobody else was up, and he ran out of stuff to do. And
I thought you were going to say he died.
no, he did not die.
Really? All right. Well, I guess I'll have to look into that science because that sounds batshit to me. But maybe we'll see. Plugs. That was a good one though, Jay. I'll give you the first plug. That was a good hypothetical. What do you got for us for plugging?
Oh, first plug. I don't have anything.
I'll come back to you because there should be an obvious plug for you. AJ, what do you got for plugs?
Let's do the YouTube channel. Go check it out, everybody. Alex is killing it, doing an awesome job.
Nice. Yeah. Shout out to Alex. I don't know if she came back. She was like, oh, I got to drop off, but she is back. The God voice in producer mode speaking in our ears. I love it. She's back. Nice. Shout out to Alex. Mauricio, what's up, buddy? What do you got?
Coaching with Mauricio. If you want to learn and be mentored by me to raise capital compliantly and not screw it up, just go to Coaching with Mauricio. We'll see if it's a fit.
Nice. Jay, what do you got?
We've got a deal coming up, but it's too early. I'm not ready to announce this. I'm going to announce it once we start taking. Actually, I can't announce it because our investor portal, has a bug, and it's it's not letting investors sign up with soft commitments right now. So I have a
So you've been anti-plug to our software that we've been using.
Yeah. So I got 3. I'm going to go with Conference Connect. Looking for a conference.
You don't get 3, Jay. You get 1.
You're one of them. So shut up, Mauricio.
As long as one of them's Conference Connect, he gets 3. Let him go.
Conference Connect. Go jump on right now. Claim your speaker profile. Then I'm going to go Mauricio with his. No, because you're last. You were just being rude. AJ, go check out AJ's YouTube channel. It's awesome. And then
Mauricio's going to get his plug taken away. Like, no plug for you.
Mauricio, check out Mauricio coming to Columbus, Ohio. Oh no, you're not going to be there this weekend. Sorry, that's not you. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, fine. Mauricio.
Don't take his plug away too fast. It gets messy if you pull out the plug too fast.
Mauricio does have an awesome coaching program. And I was not an official member of his coaching program, but everything I've learned about.
We're very selective. We're very selective of who we let in. And unfortunately, you were not able to get in. Sorry, Jay.
But I will say that everything I've learned about raising capital legally and compliantly and staying out of prison
is from Bethany. I got it.
Is from Mauricio's partner, Bethany. I was going to say the exact same thing.
All right. I'm going to plug my wife. Check her out. BadAshInvestor at BadAshInvestor, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah, that's all I got, guys. We all back next week? All of us?
Oh, yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
We'll see how the GDP shook out.
Oh, so, quick prediction. Let's do it. Mauricio, GDP.
Negative.
Negative what?
Less than 0.5. So like 0.3 or something.
AJ.
I think the upside 0.5 to 1. That's with the trade deficit.
Yep. Okay. Kyle.
Wait, we can caveat it? Doesn't it all get included in?
It's whatever the number is.
Well, it's all included in. I'm just saying, like, because it's counted on a rolling type thing. So
right. Yeah. Got it. Negative 0.8.
Okay. I'm going 0.
Ooh, pick the middle.
I'm going 0.
Dude, it's like the roulette table is going for the double zeros.
There you go.
Double zeros, baby.
All right. We'll be able to tell next week, but otherwise I'll see you next Thursday.